This is the second section of Avunculus Meus by Pliny, where he talks about his uncle studying even while travelling. These things took place during the middle of the toils and the noise of the city. In his country retreat, only bath time was taken away from studies. When I say bath, I am talking about the inner rooms. For while he was being scraped and wiped down, he would listen to something or dictate. On a journey, as if released from all other anxieties, he had time for this alone. At his side there would be a secretary with a book and a writing tablet, whose hands were protected with mittens in winter, so that not even the harshness of the weather might take away any study time. For this reason, he rode in a sedan chair in Rome also. I recall that I was rebuked by him because I walked. He said, "You could have not wasted these hours," for he thought that all time which was not spent on studies was wasted. Farewell. Now we move on to a vivid picture of how Pliny's uncle continues his studies even in the middle of the city's chaos. The opening phrase we'll look at first. It starts with a bit of a juxtaposition here, a contrast placed side by side. So we have the labores, right, the works or the toils, set against the fremitum, so the noise or a loud roar or rumble. This is a very strong word for noise. It helps show how much effort it took to concentrate amid these distractions. And the word medios, middle. Here we go, this one here puts us right into the thick of it. This isn't quiet study in a country villa, but serious work in the heart of a noisy city. We've talked already about fremitum being particularly vivid. It suggests something loud, overwhelming, almost like the growl of a crowd or the din of traffic today. Then we get a surprising detail about when he actually made time to study properly. In Successu solum planae tempus studiis exime barter, meaning only his time in the baths in private was taken away for studies. So exime barter, was taken away, is a bit of an unusual verb here. It's passive and literally means was removed. The idea is that study time had to be carved out from his day, showing how determined he was. The word solum as well, this one here at the start of line 14, makes the point even stronger. This was particularly the only bit of time for study purposes. Then Pliny clarifies with cum dico planae de interioribus loquor. So when I say baths, I'm talking about the inner rooms. This is almost a parenthesis, a little aside to the reader. It reminds us that even in the bath, where you'd expect him to relax, he was hard at work. So this bit here. And then if we just look at this keyword here as well, it contrasts with the noisy outer areas. He was seeking quiet, but not to relax, only to work more effectively. Okay. Next, we hear about what he was doing in there, right, where he's being scraped and wiped down. He'd listen to something or dictate. The verbs that we have are in the present tense. So this one here, and this next one next to it. So even though the story's happening in the past, therefore we've got some historic presents which bring the scene to life as if it's happening right now in front of us. Destringintur refers to being scraped down with a strigil. This is a kind of instrument where you'd oil yourself up and then scrape off all the dead skin. So a hint at a typical bathing custom. And the structure that we have as well, there's a bit of a syndeton, there's no and between them, right? Audiebat, aliquid, out, dictabat. So we listen to something or dictate. This gives us the impression of sort of speed, I suppose, or a quick, efficient activity. There's no pause. And it also shows us how he used even these moments when someone else was watching him to carry on with his learning. Then Pliny moves on to what he did on his journeys. So he says, on a journey, as if released from all of their anxieties, he had time for this alone. He says, quasi solutus, so as though freed. This bit here, which is quite a nice phrase. It shows he wasn't really free, just temporarily released. It emphasizes how all his freedom was directed towards one thing alone: study. Then, after it, Pliny goes on and he talks about the other Pliny giving his time to this one thing alone. This bit is quite an emphatic word order going on, right? Huic uni, to this one thing, is placed at the start of this clause to show just how focused he was to this one thing. And then we get a detailed image of how seriously he takes his studies. Okay, we've got at his side this secretary with a book and writing tablets, um, and Latus Notarius. This is the bit talking about the secretary here. It shows how constant this setup was, right? He was always ready to work, even when travelling, because he's got this secretary by his side. Cum libro et puginaribus reminds us of the practical side of working. Okay, these are wax tablets, easily portable, suited to note taking on the move. Right, you might have like a little notebook with you now if you're doing the same thing. And then we get a really nice phrase talking about his secretary with these little mittens on to protect himself in the winter. Manikis is talking about the mittens, but more importantly, Munier banter is a really interesting word, right? This one at the end. It literally means to be fortified or defended. It comes from the same root as building a fortification or a city wall. So this is a bit of a military metaphor. His secretary's hands are being armoured, not for comfort, but as a defensive measure in the fight to protect study time. The cold is imagined as an invading enemy, and even the weather must be overcome in the name of this intellectual work. Okay, it's a really nice little bit there. He moves on, and we get quite a strong negative in the next bit. So this bit down here, ne quidem, very emphatic. Similar for this, we have the roughness of the weather, right, which is Kylie Spiritas, the harshness of the weather, is quite sort of a poetic phrase for the winter cold. And a ripperet, which comes at the end, is a nice verb, which means snatch away. That's another quite violent verb, which makes us feel like time is fragile and under threat, like something that needs to be defended. As Pliny moves on, then we hear about his uncle's unusual habit in Rome, where he is carried in a litter, which might seem, I suppose, like a practical thing, right? He wants to read or dictate without being interrupted, so he used transport that allows him to do both. So that's quite a nice inclusion here, talking about the sela, the sedan chair that he's being carried in. What else do we have? After this, Pliny then shares his personal memory of his uncle, right, where he says, repeto, I recall. Another vivid word or vivid verb that's being used here that's almost dramatic, right? Literally it means I seek back, which makes us feel that the memory is immediate. And, well, what about his memory, is it? Well, it's the fact that he has been rebuked, right? Correptum. It's quite a strong word being told off, and it shows how seriously his uncle took these matters. The direct speech here adds a little bit of life to this memory. Okay, so this bit down here where his uncle is speaking directly to him, he says, as Horace, these hours, to show how specific and valuable each hour was, and perdere, to waste, this verb, makes it clear if you weren't studying, you are wasting time. Then comes our final line, for he thought all time was lost if it wasn't spent on studying. Perire, the verb that comes, is quite a dramatic one. Okay, it's almost tragic. It suggests time dies if it isn't used for learning. And look at what time dies, right? It's not just any time, it's omne tempus, quite hyperbolic, an exaggeration to show the extreme nature of his values. We have in this sentence a bit of a contrast between that first verb, right, the infinitive perire, to be lost or to die, and impenderator, to be spent or devoted, that comes at the end. This contrast gives us a clear black and white view, times either used wisely or wasted. So it's quite nice that these two go together. So to sum up this whole story then, Pliny gives us an unforgettable portrait of someone whose entire life was centered around intellectual work. Every verb and phrase and piece of clothing that we have, right, adds to the image of a man who treated time as sacred. This isn't just a story about personal discipline, but it's actually a model for Roman values about learning, seriousness, and the fear of wasting time. And crucially, not giving in to your vices, like we see in the story of Messalina by Tacitus.